Good morning. In this architectural theory class today, I'm going to explain about the second categorization of architectural theory that I have explained in the fourth meeting, which is how best to design. This architectural theory categorization generally speaks about the process of design, including adopted approach, utilized framework, and employed methodology. Each architect has developed their own design process to generate their architecture. Thus, it is important for us to be able to broaden up our database about how best to design and its relation with architectural theory. Before getting through to how best to design, let's go back to the position of the theory itself in the design process. Playwright illustrated how architectural theory takes part into the delivery of design. In this diagram, he depicts that there are three major stages in a generating design proposal, that is, proposing design priorities, design process, and design manifestation. In proposing design priorities, we can see that philosophy, which comes from the exploration of theory believed by architects, influences the framing of the belief filter. This filter then helps creating priorities that is used to select method used in the design process. Inside the design process, theory is it based on the bias values to make judgment of the priorities. It means that the selected theory helps in testing or evaluating the appropriateness of the design priorities used to manifest a design. Lastly, the method used in the design process avails producing the design manifestation in the form of proposal. As we can see here, there are two positions of theory that depicted explicitly by Playwright in this diagram. First is the theory that shaped the framing, which is philosophy, and the second is the theory that helps to judge design priorities during the design process. The first theory, we call it what architecture is, and the second theory we call how best to design. Now we are going to discuss about the nature of theory and design. Generally, theory is an activity related to clarifying. Meanwhile, design revolves around making or planning to express a composition or idea. If we are going to talk about how best to design, I think we should be aware of design and design process. As you can see here, design is made through design process. Design is the result and design process is the method or means that develops over time. So as conclusion, how best to design speaks about the design process itself. When we look at architecture as design problems, Horst Riddle captured it by characterizing it as a wicked problem, where there exists no complete formula that ensures its solution. It has no definitive end. It can be engaged through a variety of approaches. It uses different beginnings and sometimes it arrives at different endings. And it also has no definitive answer. If we call architecture as design problems, it means that design process is a problem-solving activity. It explains that the activity moves from the general to specific or vice versa in order to develop a design. Karen Spence, in her book titled A Primer Theory in Architecture, explains there are four types of problem-solving activities that usually engage by a designer or in our case architect in delivering a design. There are a comprehensive set of definitive stages, a loose sequence of decisions, a reflective activity, and a conjecture that is then analyzed. She named a comprehensive set of definitive stages as analysis synthesis, a loose sequence of decisions as decision tree, a reflective activity as reflection in action, and a conjecture that is then analyzed as conjecture analysis. Now, let's focus on the first approach of design process, which is analysis synthesis. In this approach of design process, there are two distinctive activities involved. The first activity is problem seeking. During the Problem seeking, designer or architect identifies or analyzes a problem or issue to generate programming for the design. The programming then is used to synthesize the design, which acts as a problem solving activity. But the relationship between problem seeking and problem solving is iterative in many ways. The design is able to be evaluated to identify new programming and helps to synthesize a new design. Numerous designers have proposed analysis synthesis models over the years. First, I'm going to talk about the model suggested by John Lang. John Lang initiated models consist of three stages during the design process. First stage is gathering information. The information gathered helps producing possible solutions. All the possible solutions then are evaluated to be implemented. The cyclical nature of the model is iterative, where the implementation has a role to give feedback, to revisit the possible solutions, and regather new information through the use of post-occupancy evaluation, or we can call it POE. Next model is proposed by Bruce Archer. His model consists of 5 distinctive stages, starting from programming, data collection, analysis, synthesis, development, and communication as well as execution as a result of the process. Before the communication and execution is generated, the development, synthesis, analysis, and data collection are able to have iterative cycle to revisit the data collection if needed. And then the process will begin again from data collection, analysis, synthesis, development, and resulting a communication and execution. Now, we are going to see another model proposed by Maurice Asimov. He had simplified model proposed by Bruce Archer before into 4 stages, starting from analysis, synthesis, evaluation, and resulted in communication. Each stages help designer or architect to gather more issues in order to broaden up their understanding to solve the issue or problem. Tim McGinty, on the other hand, proposed other terms on illustrating design process model. He depicts initiation as the starting point of a design process, and then it's followed by preparation, proposal making, and evaluation. Tim called the manifestation of this model as action. As you can see in the diagram, that the nature of initiation until evaluation stage is iterative. It means that those stages are able to be revisited again before proposing an action. The next approach in the design process illustrated by Karen Spence is decision tree. This image illustrates how designer or architect solves a problem or issue based on the decision they make. The decision itself relates to another decision to think of. This kind of method strongly depends on the designer or architect's knowledge about the issue. The embodied knowledge of the designer or architect helps them to understand and analyze the issues and then stimulates to identify and make the design decision making resulting a list of related decisions. The decisions then are tested to fit the design priorities and criteria. There are various options for moving through such a decision-making process. One is that design decisions can be made without much foresight or deliberation, selecting one possibility over another for no particular reason. The series of choices is arbitrary and indiscriminate, moving unsystematically through the activity. While this random method offers little support for each decision as well as its influence on the resulting direction of the process, it is still able to produce a design. A second option is the predetermination of a specific conclusion. All decisions here are directed toward the support of the desired outcome. With the ends directing the means, the selections become more limited but may still include a range of possibilities. Because the end is largely concluded, the series of choices can be made without much concern about sequence. This type of situation is seen in a design that is determined beforehand to achieve a given form. A third option is an awareness of an overall organization to design process, approaching the decisions in a logical order. Arranging decisions in a hierarchical manner provides a sequencing in which the results of one decision have a rational relationship to the next. Such an organization may be from major to minor ideas, from the details to the whole, or from one of these positions to the other and back again, revisiting the initial decisions after gaining information about the entire sequence. Next, we are going to discuss about reflection in action. Another way of describing the design process is offered by Donald Schoen, who discusses the activity as one of reflection in action. In reflection in action, a problem must first be set before it is solved. The designer has the ability to interpret the situation and address other issues that they identify. In this kind of approach, the activity of design is seen to be responsive to the circumstances at hand and works as a kind of give and take between the existing limitations and what is desired. Schoen introduces a number of terms to describe reflection in action, including reframing and appreciative systems. Reframing speaks to the way in which the perception of a situation can be changed in order to introduce a different understanding, shedding new light on how design problem is viewed. It identifies a designer's ability to go beyond a way of seeing conditions in familiar ways to introduce a perspective that may not be obvious but opens up many positive attributes for the design. By introducing an unusual approach or association, the problem is able to be reset. The ability to reframe opens up the potential for meeting the needs of situations that are even unseen at the outset of the design process and is successful when it results in something that is valued beyond what was expected. Such regard for moves that produce desired situation is identified with the term appreciative systems, recognizing positive elements that can be introduced in projects. Designers with experience see these instances that provide usefulness and meaning, introducing an ability to judge the worthiness of the design. In this way, the design process is seen as an activity that negotiates between phase of action and appreciation. The fourth description of the design process can be defined as conjectural analysis. This way of working suggests that designers propose possible solutions, then analyze how this performs. A person's ability to offer such conjecture derives from his experience and knowledge, which serves as a database of information about the built environment. This knowledge is the primary genesis of proposed solutions. While suggestions that come from a thorough and carefully considered understanding of the problem may appear to be a more reasonable foundation, it is logical that a designer is unable to imagine something which he doesn't know. Design is understood as an activity that cannot happen without influence. Everything that is advanced is affected by the individual's understandings and how he organizes and frames the situation, either implicitly or explicitly. Proposals become starting points that provide something to evaluate in this approach. With something to assess, the design process gains definition and direction. A view of the demands of the design becomes clear. Determining what works and improving upon that design happens when there is a proposal to be examined and the designer is willing and able to change or alter it. So, from four approaches I explained before, analysis synthesis, decision tree, evaluation in action, and conjecture analysis, we can conclude similarity based on their characteristics. First, it always starts by identifying a problem, and then there is so-called a period of thinking and making. After that, we come to a proposal or response as a result. Now, if we compare design process and theorizing, a process to generate a theory, there are several differences that we can address. Design process starts from identifying issues or a problem to produce a planning or making design, while theorizing is initiated from desire to find more explanation about an issue. Design process addresses problems and tries to find solution about it. On the other hand, Theorizing sees an issue and seeks for understanding about that matter. The design process is a response of a situation, while theorizing is improving comprehension. Lastly, design process is naturally specific, while theorizing is general. For example, a design is supposed to be specific enough to solve a problem or issue, such as designing a public housing for refugees in a specific area that are climatic responsive. On the other hand, the general nature of theory can be seen from my explanation before about four approaches in design process. It is very general that it represents different approaches used by designers or architects. Furthermore, design process has a definitive endings. It ends when the proposal is provided. Meanwhile, theorizing, on the other hand, is infinite. One theory can lead another theorizing and it can happen anytime. Next question then is how design process and theorizing interacts. There are four possibilities of interaction between design process and theorizing. First, theorizing and designing work together. The initial observations that encourage an individual to seek both a clarification of and a response to an issue may work in a collaboration. It is possible to imagine a situation in which striving for an explanation and making a plan support one another. Another option for the relationship between these activities is theorizing informs and guides designing. The two interact in an order that enables clarifying to be addressed and produce an explanation which is then used to assist the design process. Next relationship is designing enlightens and leads theorizing. This possibility suggests that thinking and making operate as a united creative avenue, considering a wide variety of issues that culminate in an expression. Theorizing is able to reflect on this activity using the work to develop a general clarification. A final relationship, possibly between the design process and theorizing, is that the two are separate and remain so. It is possible to understand that the subject of design and theory have only a tangential relationship as they are part of the same discipline, yet do not necessarily interact. In architectural school, the design process always interacts with theory, whether working together or leading one another. Theory helps to generate robust design and responsibility towards what architects offer to the built environment. For the undergraduate students, it is the theory who leads the designs. It helps students to find a way to generate logical decisions through a supervised design process. It builds up students' capacity to understand and solve problems in architecture-related and unrelated domain. That's all my presentation for today. If you have any questions, please ask me in the WhatsApp group. Thank you and all the best.